On Monday, we interviewed Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on a variety of topics. The Director of Communications from their Washington office has issued a statement regarding this exchange. You've heard President Trump talk about how he thinks about images too, but the images he thinks about are October 7th and what happened inside Israel. So how does this come to an end? Much like Russia-Ukraine, how can this come to an end? Is there a deal that can be made?
I can only say this. Mr. Trump, you might remember he used a term when he said, I will finish the Russia-Ukraine war. Did it end? It still goes on. Similarly, he said, I will finish the war in Gaza. Did it end? No. That means once we start analyzing the issue, there are prices to pay. And when we look at the hostage exchange, that was done. It goes on.
Now, according to Turkish officials, quote, President Erdogan's response to a question regarding the ending of wars was subject to a loss of meaning during translation. During the interview, President Erdogan emphasized that bringing wars to an end involves significant challenges and costs and recognized President Trump's efforts in this regard. The president of Turkey clearly wanted to clarify that exchange ahead of his meeting with President Trump at the White House tomorrow. Fox News is standing by the accuracy of our translation.
Just hours from now, President Trump will return to the United Nations to deliver a wide-ranging address while also meeting with world leaders to discuss plans for a post-war Gaza.
All right, this comes as top allies to the United States formally recognize a Palestinian state, drawing swift criticism from Israeli leadership. So what does this mean ahead of this week's high-stakes summit?
Let's bring in the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Mr. Secretary, thanks so much for joining Fox and Friends this morning.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Secretary, we were hoping that you can give us a preview. Apparently, the president wants his famous message of peace through strength today at the UN. What do you anticipate him saying?
Well, I think one of the things the president's going to have to address and is going to address is the UN itself. And that is, why do we still have a UN? It has tremendous potential. The UN is an organization that has the potential to do some great things around the world, but it's not doing it. If you look at Russia and Ukraine, you have a war going on there. It's the president that's been carrying the burden of trying to bring it to an end. The UN is playing no role. If you look at what's happening in Gaza with Hamas and everything that's happened there with Israel taking them on, what role is the UN playing? None. We're going to try here, and even as close to home in the Western Hemisphere, in a place like Haiti, that's been overrun by gangs that control that country and has destabilized the region. The U.S. is asking for the UN to step up and play a very important role. We have a lot of support, but it looks like China might stand in the way of this effort to bring that about. The UN will play no role if they do that. So I think what the president's going to do is challenge the UN to find its meaning and its purpose and its utility as an organization, because it doesn't seem to be doing the job, and it's pretty good at spending a lot of money. I think you can anticipate the president will point to his own history with the UN, going back to his time here as a developer, where he actually offered to fix the UN building, and instead they chose to go in another direction, wasted a bunch of money, and really didn't achieve on the building's perspective what needed to happen. And I think it's emblematic of how feckless the UN has become as an organization. It's just a place where once a year a bunch of people meet and give speeches and write out a bunch of letters and statements, but not a lot of good, important action is happening. So again, the UN has a lot of potential, but it's not living up to it right now.
So the Turkish leader Erdogan sat down with Brett Baer yesterday. We got two topics to talk to you about that, one of which was asked about the war in Russia. He's basically, he's indifferent. He likes both guys, and in Gaza. But he seems to take a shot at President Trump. Listen.
I can only say this. Mr. Trump, you might remember he used a term when he said, I will finish the Russia-Ukraine war. Did it end? It still goes on. Similarly, he said, I will finish the war in Gaza. Did it end? No. That means once we start analyzing the issue, there are prices to pay. And when we look at the hostage exchange, that was done. It goes on.
So he says the president doesn't get it done. This is a NATO ally. Your thoughts?
Well, look, I didn't hear the entirety of the interview. I can only tell you that on both of those issues, on the case of Russia, Ukraine, the only leader in the world that has any chance of bringing it to an end is President Trump, which is why he has put more time and energy into it than anybody else. All of these other countries, including Turkey, by the way, are begging us to be involved. They want us to be involved. Look, these people go out and say what they want to say, but at the end of the day, when they want something done, they want to come to the White House. President Erdogan is coming to the White House this week to meet with the president. They all come to the White House. They all want to speak to President Trump. They all want President Trump to fix it. So they can say whatever they want to say. The truth of the matter is that we have leaders, we have meetings going on today that we have leaders begging to be a part of it. They are calling saying, can we be included? Can you bring us in? Can you get me 5 minutes to shake the president's hand? He is the indispensable leader in the world right now. He is the only one who has any chance of not just brokering a deal to end the war with Russia and Ukraine, but also bringing about the war that's going and getting all the hostages released in Gaza. And I think he's put more time and energy into peace proposals and peace initiatives than anybody else in the world. And he's had the most success of anybody else in the world. He doesn't get a lot of credit, but let's not forget the DRC and Rwanda had a war going on. It's the president that's brokered that. Azerbaijan and Armenia. It's the president that brought that about. Thailand and Cambodia. Right. It's the president that brought that end of that about. India and Pakistan. That's just four right off the top of my head in the last few months. And the president's the one that did that, not any other leader in the world, and not the UN.
Mr. Secretary, Fox is exclusively reporting that Hamas wrote a letter directly to President Trump asking for a pause in fighting for 60 days in exchange for half of the hostages. Do you know if this letter has been delivered yet? And will the president entertain this idea?
I don't know who they gave that letter to. It wouldn't have mattered, though, because the president's been clear, and that is that we haven't seen the letter. We don't have that letter. And even if we did, it wouldn't matter. The president has already made clear he's not interested in 60 days, 10 people. He wants all the hostages out, all 48, including the 20 who are alive, the 28 who are deceased. He wants them all out. There should have never been any. Why are we even talking about hostages? Why do we still have to talk about hostages at this point? There shouldn't be any. They should all be released immediately. Period. That's the president's position. So he would have rejected that offer had it come, but we haven't seen that letter. I think they gave it to the media or somebody, but they haven't given it to us.
Mr. Secretary, the president said the final warning to Hamas. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, you've got Israel is right at the doorstep of Gaza City. I mean, they've begun an operation to go in. And all of the leaders of Hamas, all of the main leaders inside of Gaza and Hamas are all concentrated in Gaza City. It may take a while, but they're not going to survive the Israeli push. Now, what we would hope to see is that it doesn't have to happen because Hamas surrenders, they lay down their arms, they release all the hostages, and then the important work of sort of rebuilding Gaza and providing a place where Palestinians can live prosperously and peacefully, that work can begin. But that work can't begin until the hostages are released and Hamas no longer exists. And so the sooner that happens, the sooner peace will begin.
I want to make sure to get this in because I know your time is tight. You were brilliant, as in so many speakers, saluting the life of Charlie Kirk. Here's a little of the moments a lot of people are talking about. Watch.
Because he took on that death, because he carried that cross, we were freed from the sin that separated us from him. And when he returns, there will be a new heaven and a new earth, and we will all be together, and we are going to have a great reunion there again with Charlie and all the people we love.
It looks like that was coming from the heart, not the prompter. Can you bring us back to that moment?
Well, look, Charlie, I think what makes this situation so unique is that Charlie Kirk wasn't just a figure involved in American politics and a political discourse. Charlie was a friend to a lot of people in the White House and a lot of people in this administration, like on a personal level. He's someone that I had just been interacting with just a few days before he died because he was in South Korea and was eager to come back home and tell me what he had seen while he was there. And a lot of other people, the vice president was very close to him personally, a lot of members of the staff. So I think it adds a new element to this. Obviously, this is a major story, a horrific tragedy, and before everyone in the age of social media, everyone saw it instantly. And so I think it impacted people across the country, but I think it had a particularly special impact in addition to all of that because of the personal connection here. here. And I thought that on Sunday was a very unique opportunity for many of us, not just to pay tribute to the life that Charlie Kirk lived, but the way he lived it and the core of his message. And his faith was at the core of his message. I think Charlie, if he was here to say that politics is important, what we do in government is important, these debates on issues are important, but the most important thing of all is our faith and our family, and Charlie lived that, and he believed it, and it was at the core of his message. He had an extraordinary amount of wisdom for a 31-year-old young man. He really did. I mean, it usually takes a lifetime to acquire the kind of wisdom that he had.
And the president did a beautiful job speaking there, and so did his wife. The president, what is his reaction? What's the administration's reaction about our allies? We have France, we have the UK, we have Australia and Canada recognizing the Palestinian state. What does that say about our influence?
Well, these countries are doing it, frankly, because of domestic political pressure in their own countries. You know, because of migration policies, their countries have been flooded with foreigners who have become politically active and are insisting that their governments do these sorts of things. And so that's what they're responding to. But look, it's irrelevant. It's going to get a little bit of attention, but there is no Palestinian state. You can put all the, it's kind of an emblematic of what the president says about the UN. You can put out all the paper in the world you want. The only way there's ever going to be a permanent solution to this challenge between Palestinians and Israelis is a negotiated settlement, one in which the Palestinians are going to have a territory and they're going to govern it, but it cannot be one that's going to be used as a launch pad for attacks against Israel. And that's something that has to be negotiated with Israel. It isn't going to exist without Israel's participation. That's what these leaders should have spent their time working on, ending this war, eliminating Hamas, so you can get to that stage of talks about that topic. But for them, and for some of them in particular, more than others, it's sort of a vanity project that's trying to make themselves relevant. But here's the bottom line, and here's the truth. Okay, when it comes to actually getting peace done, when it comes to actually stopping this, they're not going to any of these other countries.
Of course.
They're coming to us, they're going to President Trump, and they're asking him to get involved and bring it to an end. You just asked me about a letter to from Hamas. Hamas didn't send a letter to France. Hamas didn't send a letter to any of these countries on your list. Hamas apparently, supposedly, sent a letter to President Trump because everyone knows, even an evil group like Hamas, that he's the only one with the power and the influence to make something happen.
It's such a good point, and I don't want to put you in a bad position, but do any of these countries ever tell you why they're not willing to accept any of the refugees that's coming from Gaza, from the Palestinian Authority? Because we hear publicly sometimes, what do they say?
They say, well, we can't take any more people. We already have too many. They say, frankly, what any country should say, which is, in fact, I think if they won't say it publicly, but they'll say it privately, and not just these countries in Europe. I mean, the countries in the Middle East. Look, it's not like every country in the Middle East is raising their hand and saying, okay, we'll take 100,000 refugees. It goes back to the migratory debates we've had in this own country. I mean, every country in the world thinks open borders is crazy. Egypt does not have open borders. Jordan does not have open borders. Europe does, or has had for a long time. But none of these countries, most countries in the world do not have open borders because it's crazy. It's lunacy. And only we had that under President Biden, and now that's been fixed. And I think the president will point to that in his speech today. America had a migratory crisis unlike any in the world, and we fixed it very quickly under President Trump.
All right, real quick, Mr. Secretary, what are you going to do about the Russian breaches into NATO territories? They need a muscular response. I haven't seen any.
Well, NATO is responding the way it should. If a drone comes in over your airspace, you shoot it down. That happened. We've seen flights, and this is not new, by the way. This has happened, maybe not at the frequency we've seen, but a Russian jet or a Russian bomber goes into your defense zone. You send your planes up there to intercept it. That's been happening. We've had to do that off the coast of Alaska repeatedly in many cases. So NATO is going to respond. Yesterday at the United Nations, his first day on the job, Mike Waltz, our new ambassador here, spoke at the Security Council. He made clear our position, which is that when it comes to NATO, we're going to defend every inch of it. It's an important alliance. You know, we had the best NATO summit maybe in history just a few months ago, in which with President Trump there, all these countries made their 5% pledge, except for one, Spain, who doesn't want to do it. But and you know what? At the end of the day, so that issue is what it is. On the Russia-Ukraine war, look, no one has worked harder or done more to bring this to an end. And it appears Putin may not be serious about peace. The president has expressed his deep disappointment about it. And he knows what his options are at some point here to have to impose additional costs. But he's also said that before we do that, Europe needs to do it. They're demanding all these things of us, and yet you have countries in Europe still buying massive amounts of oil and natural gas from Russia and funding and fueling the Russian aggression campaign. So I think it's important for them to step up.
Mr. Secretary, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, get stuff done. Thanks, Mr. Secretary.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
President Erdogan, thank you for the time.
Thank you. Good evening.
You are a key member in NATO. You also have a strong relationship with Russia. Given that, how do you see the Russian war in Ukraine and NATO's effort to try to stop it?
First of all, this question is coming at a sensitive time, and it's an important question. And we have very important relations with both Russia and Ukraine. We never want to have distance with these countries. We always have followed on a peace process, both with Russia and Ukraine. We would never desire for such a war to take place. But unfortunately, this war ended up with caused the deaths of millions. Russia has very serious losses. Ukraine also has very serious losses, both in human terms and financially. We would not have wished this to happen, but unfortunately, right in front of the eyes of the world, we lived through this.
Some countries' leaders call you the Putin whisperer, that you have a relationship. So how do you think it will come to an end? How do you think Vladimir Putin will stop inside Ukraine?
Truthfully, our relations with Vladimir Putin have been good since the day we met. These relations with Mr. Putin didn't mean that we had bad relations with Mr. Zelensky. Both Zelensky and the presidents of Ukraine that came before, I always had good relations with them. And these relations, just like our relationship with Russia, our relations with Ukraine, we had a model that has good relationship with countries. That's what we developed.
How do you think NATO should respond to Russian warplanes and drones entering airspace in Poland, in Estonia, other NATO ally countries?
Truthfully, NATO could use Turkey's model. I think NATO should use the model that we use with both Russia and Ukraine. In those places, we worked on a peace model, and I think it would be useful for them to use it.
If NATO, if the U.S., if the allies do not stop Vladimir Putin, what do you think happens? Knowing Putin, do you think that he continues on inside Ukraine and elsewhere?
Currently, as we know, the human losses of Ukraine and Russia's human losses, when we look at this, Russia's human loss has increased, seriously increased. And when we look at it financially, we can see especially that Ukraine cannot compete economically with Russia. But we have to also see that Europe is giving, I don't think Europe will sustain its economic aid to Ukraine forever. And currently, this support is not being given, and Ukraine is suffering as a result. Our hope is that this support will continue. But at the same time, the United States, I don't know how long it will give this support. I cannot estimate that.
Do you think the war ends soon?
I don't really believe that it will.
And that's not a good thing for the world.
It's not good news. And we thinking about this in this manner is heavy on our hearts.
There are a lot of things that are happening that around the world that are hot spots. Another big one, obviously, is what's happening in Gaza. Would you consider what's going on in Gaza genocide?
Başka türlü bunun izahı mümkün
I
değil.
don't think we can explain it in any other way.
Bu dört dörtlük bir
This is
soykırımdır.
completely a genocide.
Ve bu soykırımın
And this
faili de
genocide is caused by Netanyahu.
Netanyahu çok acımasız
Netanyahu
şekilde
mercilessly
on binleri ne yazık ki
has unfortunately killed tens of thousands with this
bunun
genocide.
dışında da tabii ciddi
Other than
manada
that,
yaralılar var.
there are a lot of there are the wounded.
120 bin, 125
We
bin
think
kadar yaralıyı
120,000 or 125,000 of them,
aldık.
we took them in our country and we are providing medical care.
Ölümler
And all these deaths, unfortunately, are as a result of this genocide. And facing this genocide, nobody is saying anything. As Turkey,
bu soykırımın da tamamıyla karşısındayız.
we are in complete opposition to this genocide.
So what do you say to people, including President Trump, who say the onus should have been on Hamas from the very beginning, understanding that the death is horrific and the numbers are horrible, but that the hostages, holding the hostages, taking the hostages and using them, the onus should have been on Hamas from the very beginning?
Bu tabii tek taraflı bir
This is not a crime that is one-sided.
suç değil. Yani burada
When
Hamas'a
we just
bu işi
accuse Hamas
demek
about this, I think that would be wrong.
yanlış olur.
At the same time,
Öbür tarafta
the things that
Netanyahu'nun
Netanyahu have done, how can we put them aside?
koyabiliriz.
For example,
Şimdi benim mesela
I
konuşmamda
am giving a speech
İsrail'in özellikle
and I say
Gazze'yi vuruşunu
I am talking about Israel hitting Gaza by providing pictures.
ve bu resimlerle
These pictures
İsrail'in Gazze'yi vuruşunda oradaki
will show how the people are being destroyed with Israel hitting Gaza. Now, can we say this?
şunu söyleyebilir miyiz? Hamas
In,
silah
in terms of armaments, can we say Hamas is stronger than Israel?
güçlüdür diyebilir miyiz?
It is not possible.
Mümkün değil.
When it comes to weapons,
Silah gücü itibariyle
it can't even be compared with Israel.
edilmeyecek bir imkanı var.
And Israel is using this power without mercy.
Acımasızca kullanıyor.
From age 7 to 70, children, women, the all elderly, they have no mercy.
Acımadan
And these people have been killed and are being killed.
You've heard President Trump talk about how he thinks about images too, but the images he thinks about are October 7th and what happened inside Israel. So how does this come to an end? Much like Russia-Ukraine, how can this come to an end? Is there a deal that can be made?
ben sadece şunu söyleyeyim.
I can only say this. Mr. Trump,
Bir ifade kullandı.
you might remember he used a term
Ukrayna savaşını
when
ben bitiririm.
he said, I will finish the Russia-Ukraine war.
Bitti mi?
Did it end?
Hala devam ediyor.
It still goes on.
Aynı şekilde
Similarly,
Gazze savaşını ben bitiririm. Dedi.
he said, I will finish the war in Gaza.
Bitti mi?
Did it end?
Hayır.
No. That means
Demek ki
once we start analyzing the issue, there are prices to
bazı
pay.
faturalar ödeniyor.
And when we look at the hostage exchange, that was done. It goes on.
Do you see Hamas as a terrorist organization?
Ben
About 20 years ago,
yaklaşık bir
when
20
I
kadar önce
traveled to the United States,
yaptığım seyahatte de bu soru.
they asked me this question again, and I said this back then.
Ben o zaman da demiştim ki
I don't see Hamas as a terrorist organization. On the contrary, I see it as a resistance group. And Hamas doesn't have weapons or a serious capability. And now they are using what they have to try to defend themselves and trying to protect themselves in this resistance movement. That's what they are as an organization.
Clearly, Israeli leaders, other leaders see Hamas in a terrorist aspect, and that's what is different. I want to ask you about your upcoming meeting at the White House. You and I talked in 2019 here on the sidelines of the UN, and we were talking about purchasing F-35s.
We are partners in the F-35 project. We are one of 9 manufacturing companies within the framework of F-35s, and until so far we have paid $1.4 billion. And on top of that, some of the components of the F-35 are being manufactured in Turkey. And for every aircraft that was not delivered to Turkey, we are losing $7 million. And 4 to 5 aircrafts were on the brink of delivery. But at the very last minute, the delivery was halted. And I don't think it's very becoming of a strategic partnership, and I don't think it's the right way to go.
In the statement that President Trump put out about your visit, he puts in there that a continuation of the F-35 talks, which we expect to conclude positively. So do you expect to get F-35s at the end of this visit this week?
This is clear. I can say this clearly. During the previous term, Mr. Trump, when he was asked this question, he said, Turkey paid for these F-35s, and they have not received the F-35s. You are not giving it to them. He said this in front of the press. And right now, we are going to negotiate on this again. We expect that the United States will also do what it needs to do, both about F-35s and also the issue of F-16s and their production, maintenance, etc.
Do you see trade changing at the result of this meeting in the White House?
I think it will improve greatly. Especially, we look at the defense industry at the top. That will come at the top. At the same time, in industry and technology, Turkey and the United States will improve their relations. I will talk about all these things with Mr. Trump, and it will be a different return to Turkey after that.
Finally, you'll speak here at the UN tomorrow, and one of the messages is about UN reform. As I mentioned, you're seen as a key member of NATO with a lot of different relationships that possibly could help NATO. What do you say to some of the leaders in the Allies who criticize how you operate inside your country? How do you address that criticism?
Truthfully, I don't know which country criticizes us in what manner. It would be hard to say anything without knowing that. First of all, we accept the criticism of those who have a point, but if it's unfair criticism, we will respond in the way we should. But currently, there is a fact, and that fact is Turkey has, surpassing for 50 years, has not been accepted into the European Union. Currently, we are a member of NATO, and the fact that Turkey is not accepted into the European Union, and I don't see that as a good approach. I think it's unfair.
Mr. President, we appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.